97.1 FM Talk Podcast.
This is Eye on Health with Dr. Michael Jones.
All right, welcome back. Happy weekend. This is Eye on Health. My name's Mike Jones. We're talking all things healthcare related as we do every week, 10 o'clock to 11 here on 97.1 FM News Talk. I'm here. We're having so much fun. We almost forgot to start the show. Here with Eric Robert from
Redbud, of course, right down from Illinois Eye Surgeons.
And we also have special guest in studio, friend of the show, Dr. Joe Ojile from
St. Louis County, South County. How's that? We'll give a shout out. Thanks, Dr. Jones.
And Dr. Joe is from the Clayton Sleep Institute. I want to make sure we give out your website and number as the show goes on. If you'll remember, he was on a couple weeks ago, and the sleep study or sleep survey for 2014 is out. And he couldn't tell us about it then, but he's back on to tell us about it now. We got lots of other good things to talk about. Eric, I was off last week. How did it go?
Everything went great. I think people thought it was a live show.
Yes.
Because the phone lines were ringing. And
I got several texts. I was giving a lecture in Phoenix where I was, but during the lecture I got several texts that said, "This is the best show you've ever done."
You know, as a matter of fact, I don't want your head to get too big here, but if I can pull it up here, I believe I got a text during the show from one Jeff Allen. The show keeps getting better and better. A lot of good information this week.
That is great when your reruns.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, you know.
It just kind of it's a fine aging process.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what it is.
You're like good wine.
That's right. You do the show and then you replay it again in a few weeks, and it's even better than the first time around. Speaking of that, I'm also out next weekend. I'm speaking to a group. This is pretty funny. I think we've talked about this. I'm speaking to the Latin American and Caribbean Society of Cataract and Refractive Surgeons. I don't know. Well, I know a little bit of Spanish, enough to get me in trouble. Remember, we had that lady from that was Spanish, and I couldn't even say the name of her organization.
The Salad Bar.
Yes, the Salad Bar. So anyway, that's where I'm at next weekend. But there's good news because
that's right.
Eric is going to be having a special episode next week. Tell us about it.
It's going to be pretty cool. There's a book. We're going to be interviewing the co-author. The book's called When Helping Hurts, and it is about our often well-meaning efforts to help, inner city neighborhoods, third world countries, things like that with poverty alleviation, but how often we're not approaching it from the right point of view. So we're going to start it off there and then look at a couple organizations that I'm involved with here in St. Louis that are taking that relational approach and how the listeners can help and join in. It's going to be really good.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a great show. So that'll be next weekend, right?
Next weekend, 10 o'clock.
10 to 11. That'll be Eric Robert. And Eric goes on the mission trips like we've talked about. Yep. You just got back a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago.
And you survived.
I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on the radio, but we'll do it next week.
And you were teaching soccer while you were down there.
I'm teaching a sport I don't even know. Yeah.
Very good. Well, tune in next week. That sounds like that's going to be a great show. And later on in the show with Dr. Joe, we're going to be talking all things sleep related. I'm getting a little sleepy while I was driving in this morning. Am I okay?
It's probably just the thought of my personality.
Yeah, that's what it was. You're the one guest that I feel okay if I fall asleep while you're talking.
That's perfect.
Don't take offense to that. And Dr. Joe, once again, is all decked out in his Billikens.
There you go.
Billikens. Did anyone see the game the other night? It was amazing. They came back from 16 points down. And today they're playing Louisville, I believe, at 1:45, somewhere around that. So tune in, root the Billikens on.
It was a great night for us old Billiken fans, wasn't it?
It was. It was great. Well, actually, I almost had a heart attack, but I slept very well that night, by the way. As you know, we always start the show off with some medically related news. And I want to do something new. Every week, I'm going to pull up my favorite new ICD-10 code. Remember, we've talked in the past about ICD-10, which is the way the government is making us all change our coding system. Our codes are exploding, and they have all these interesting codes now that doctors have to code on. And my favorite one for this week, guys, Eric and Dr. Joe, my favorite one is code number T71.231D. That's asphyxiation due to being trapped in a discarded refrigerator. Accidental, first time.
I like that a lot.
Interesting.
So, and any of the listeners out there, I actually got some emails when we did that show a couple of weeks ago with some of their own codes. If you find a code, you can Google these codes, email them to me, and I'll read them on the show. But that was my favorite one for this week.
Did you do that because of pulmonary? Was it a pulmonary?
Yeah, that's
code?
right.
That's
I did it just for you. That's right.
Because nobody can go an hour without referencing the Malaysian Airlines story. What code does that fall under?
Can you find one? Can you
I'm
Google
looking,
and find
fall in, on, or from aircraft injuring occupant of commercial aircraft powered in surface-to-surface. Nope, that's not it.
That's not going to fit. No.
There's a whole list of them
Well,
here.
you know what? We'll look, and then maybe in the next couple of weeks we can find one that codes the tragedy of Malaysian Airlines.
There you go.
I bet they have an individual code depending on which airline you were flying on.
Yeah, well, it's looking like it. I mean, this is a long list of codes.
It looks like this code is particular only for discarded refrigerators. Now, one that's currently in use must have another code. And also, it was for accidental asphyxiation. In other words, if you locked yourself in on purpose,
right,
it would be a completely different code,
yeah,
fortunately.
Well, and I guess that matters if it's a discarded refrigerator because the temperature inside could be a factor.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Oh, man.
All right, where do you go from there?
Yeah, I don't know where you go from there. That's great. Anyway, ICD-10 is coming. Dr. Joe, what do you think of ICD-10? You all ready for it?
We are getting ready. We are not ready currently, and it's going to be quite a challenge, I think, for all of us in practice.
Yeah.
I think we both are, I'm sure, preparing. There are some predictions, and it'd be interesting to get your input. There's concerns that the government and the insurance companies won't be ready to accept the codes. As I'm sure you lived through this. It's happened several times now where they've changed some of the numbering on the claim forms by decree, and then when we submitted the claims, their computers weren't ready to accept them, and we had a very dramatic reduction in the ability to pay our staff.
That's exactly it. I think that is absolutely going to happen. I don't think there's any way private insurance or Medicare is going to be able to handle these codes, no doubt about it. So what we talked about a couple weeks ago is the explosion in these codes, getting so specific on the detail with these codes. And if you miscode by one letter, the doctor, his staff, his practice will not be reimbursed for the services rendered. And I think it's just going to be a nightmare. Now, they've already delayed this once. It's supposed to take effect in October of this year. My practice with all of its resources is getting ready to go on it. It's interesting, thinking about some of these smaller practices that don't have the manpower behind it. I don't think there's any way they're going to be ready to transition over to ICD-10. I think it'll be interesting if they delay it again. Yeah,
it's going to be a challenge. There's several levels of challenges, which you've done a great job of outlining. And the larger organizations appear to be doing, in the last month or two, quite a bit more aggressive preparation. Smaller practices clearly don't have either the manpower to do it and also the disruption in current activity. So it is going to be challenging. And given the current stress in the healthcare system with all the changes.
One more thing.
Yeah,
right.
It'd be nice if they would. It would be shrewd to delay it, actually, from the standpoint of alleviating some of the stress on the system. But it remains to be seen if they'll do something like that.
I mean, they seem to delay everything else and with the new healthcare law. So why not delay this? Who knows? The argument from their side is, well, this is the code system that's used around the world. The big difference is that no other country is the physician reimbursement or hospital reimbursement based on a code system. So that means if you miscoded being trapped in a discarded refrigerator and you're in Sweden and you miscoded it by one and it wasn't accidental, it was an intentional asphyxiation in a discarded refrigerator, it's not going to affect how that physician or hospital is reimbursed. But here in the U.S., because our reimbursement is so closely tied to these codes, I think it's going to be a big nightmare. Oh, man. Speaking of nightmares, what a segue.
Wow.
Yeah,
very smooth.
That was professional.
All right, stay tuned through the break. When we come back, we're going to be actually don't go to sleep in the break. Well, can they take a nap in the break, or is that bad for them?
5-minute nap.
5-minute
Power nap.
Come back with Dr. Joe Ojile from Clayton Sleep Institute.
And we're back. with more Eye on Health with Dr. Michael Jones.
All right, welcome back. Hope everyone got a power nap in the break. This is Eye on Health. My name's Michael Jones. We're on every weekend, 10 to 11, here on FM News Talk 97.1, talking all things healthcare related. We've got a special guest in studio. He's back again, Dr. Joe Ojile from Clayton Sleep Institute.
Yep.
Thanks so much for coming back in, Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe works at Clayton Sleep Institute. His website's claytonsleep.com. That's a pretty easy website. I can get that one. And the phone number, if you want to get in touch, 314-645-5855. That's an appointment line or a question line they can get into.
And then go to the website. And actually now we're on Facebook. So if people need to, I guess we all have to do that these days.
Oh, good for you.
You walked into
It's
it.
reactionary.
You were just
can't
waiting
help
for
it.
that.
Oh, great. So you're on Facebook. I'm sorry. I didn't
That's
mean
all.
to-
Thanks for having us back.
Thanks for coming back on. And if you have a question for Dr. Joe, the sleep expert, we got some great questions last time.
314-969-9797 or 866-455-9797.
Now, Dr. Joe, the last time you were here, you were talking about the sleep study or sleep survey for 2014, and you couldn't go into it. Before we jump into that, I want to ask you, does the switch to daylight savings time, the speeding the clocks up an hour, does that really affect our body cycles?
It actually does. The spring forward, the loss of an hour, it has been studied rather extensively, and there are significant ramifications, especially on Monday and Tuesday of that week. There are things. First of all, people have more difficulty functioning in the mornings. They're more sleepy at night. There has been in several studies seen increase in automobile accidents, some increase in things like cardiac events like heart attacks, which I think you're probably well familiar with from your training. So there are these sort of things that do go on, and it's raised a debate around the country about, is this something we need to continue to do as a society? And I think that's going to center around, do we see value still with our fellow citizens who are farming and so forth, because that's the reason this was instituted. So we want to be sensitive to their needs, and I think that conversation has begun. We'll see where it goes.
How long do you think it takes a typical person to adjust to that change? Because I'm still tired.
Well, it might have to do with those three strapping young men you brought in with you today.
Right.
The typical way, it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 days for people to adapt.
Wait a minute. He's talking about my three children that are in studio, and I didn't bring three strapping men with me.
They're strapping for 5 to 9-year-olds.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to clarify. I don't have three strapping men keeping me up at night. It's
like
my children here.
Tobler with the Putin thing.
Right. Yeah, I know. Well, this station's really getting off track. Anyway, yes, they do keep me up at night. But I'm sorry. So how long you think it would take?
Typically anywhere from 3 to 5 days, given our lifestyles. I mean, normally it would be about 2 days, but people are trying to adapt and work. The rule of thumb, think about it as jet lag. We basically all jump to the Eastern time zone, right? So it takes about 1 or 2 days for every time zone or two. But it seems to be that people have more difficulty with this particular leap because we're living life. We're not going on vacation.
Right, and it's harder to go forward than it is the going back. Is there anything we can do to prepare for it or to make the transition easier?
So preparation-wise, what we do, if people have the ability to do this, and some from a lifestyle standpoint don't, if in the days preceding it, say, because it happens on Saturday night, starting on Thursday, if they can go to bed anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes earlier each of those 3 nights, they'll be in good position come Monday morning.
Oh, that's a great idea. What about the role of melatonin? I can't remember if I asked you last time, that the pill, melatonin, does that help?
Well, melatonin can be helpful, particularly in this instance, because melatonin is more effective when you travel east. So if you go to Europe, you need to take it about 60 to 90 minutes before you go to bed. But the key there is you're trying to go to bed earlier. And the problem with daylight savings time is that we make the leap all in one night, and people aren't necessarily trying to go to bed earlier on Saturday night because of daylight savings time. So the effect may be blunted by that. People aren't having difficulty getting to sleep. They're getting up early and basically robbed of an hour of sleep.
So if you're going to take melatonin, which is just over the counter, correct?
Yes.
I mean, do you start it, let's say I'm going to travel to Europe. Do I take it before I leave, or do you wait till you get there and take it that night when you're going to sleep?
You wait till you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and you
All
can
right.
use it really the first about 3 to 5 nights. It can be very effective in helping you get to sleep.
You do think it works? I mean,
It does. There is a benefit. The one area that melatonin has been shown to be effective in scientifically has been in helping certain patients with jet lag. So it is something we counsel our patients. It's an inexpensive, easy thing to do, and you throw it in your overnight kit.
Okay, and there's no side effects of that medicine. Do you get sleepy with it, or
It's not a hypnotic in that regard, so it doesn't, in a sense, make you sleepy. It is mimicking the hormone. We call it the hormone of darkness. Melatonin spikes up not long after you go to sleep normally. And, of course, so if you go to sleep early, like when you travel east, the hormone that your body doesn't know to make melatonin spike up and keep you asleep. So what you're doing is substituting it physiologically. So that's the basis for it.
So you get there, you take it the night you're there, 60 to 90 minutes before you're ready to go to bed? That's how it works?
That's a great way to do it.
Well, that's great advice. Very
And
good.
I do it myself.
Okay. So not only does it work for jet lag, you think it also maybe help for people that are struggling when we change the clocks forward?
It could be beneficial for those few days.
Does anyone ever struggle when you change the clocks back? I mean, is that...
It's much less common because what we're doing effectively, we live, and it's a good thing is to do with the National Sleep Foundation poll. We are despite all the great efforts by people like you to do health education, we still live in a sleep-deprived society. So in the fall, we gain an hour of sleep whether we want it or not. So frequently we see people who feel better from that. The problem is, it's sort of like budgeting, right? You can't constantly give yourself an extra hour.
Right.
We wish we could.
Right. Oh, yeah. Actually, we could all just take a nap during Eye on Health one weekend. We could just sleep for that hour. Would that help?
That would help. They usually do it during my office visits.
I know that you recommend these full night sleeps every night. If you're sleep deprived all week, does it ever benefit to take some power sleep where you get 10 hours to catch up for your sleep deficit, or does that not help?
So the sort of catching up on the weekend, from a long-term perspective, that usually isn't a very good strategy, but there are some niche situations where some catching up can be helpful. So if you're in a job, or there's so many folks that they're trying to make a living. They work 2 or 3 jobs. They're going to school. They're raising children, as we've all done, and that's the only time they're so sleep deprived during the week. So there can be some benefit to either a little extended sleep time or a controlled nap on the weekend, say an hour. What you don't want to do is sleep the day away. It can precipitate the onset of either insomnia or other bad sleep habits. So it has to be done carefully, but sleep deprivation itself is problematic. So there needs to be an accommodation. We are very sensitive to people who are really trying to get by in life by working hard and raising families and working several jobs. And I know you are as well.
Yes, 4 or 5 jobs to make it. So, yeah, I mean, as much as you can, then you still want to try to get that and not just catch it all up on the weekend. And the one other thing, before we take our first break and then get back with the sleep survey, at the point at which you wake up in your sleep cycle, is that important? There's these apps or these machines that will slowly wake you up during a point in your sleep cycle that they say is the best for you to wake up. I've tried them, and when it worked, I don't know if it was placebo effect. I did feel like I was more rested. Do those things really work, waking up at the right point in your sleep cycle?
The bigger issue is to get enough quantity of sleep on a regular basis. There is a natural waking up that occurs. So you go through your sleep cycles, all the stages of sleep about every 90 minutes as an adult. For the youngsters, like your youngsters, it's about every 60 minutes. So your brain does come into a lighter stage or awakening, even if we're not aware at that point. Waking up in a particular sleep cycle, if your sleep's normal, doesn't alter much.
Very good info. Stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the 2014 Sleep Survey.
Out upon the islands on a cool summer night, buddy, you don't got to hurry, take your time. What you need is on the menu, and you get it tonight, buddy, you got women's on your mind.
This is Eye on Health with Dr. Michael Jones.
Welcome back. This is Eye on Health. Eric, you brought up a good point at the beginning of the show. We've had lots of great guests on the last few weeks. If you missed any of them, they're all podcast. You can stream them. You can podcast them through 971talk.com. They sound very good. In fact, you can hear Dr. Joe's first appearance a few weeks ago.
That's right.
Right on 971talk.com, or check out the Facebook page. We also archive them there. Just do a search for Illinois Eye Surgeons when you're on Facebook. I do want to point out a new video that we put up on Facebook talking about Varion, which is the image-guided cataract surgery. If you haven't seen the video, check it out. It's pretty cool, pretty amazing. That's on Facebook as well. Today, we've got Dr. Joe Ojile from Clayton Sleep Institute. Go to claytonsleep.com or 314-645-5855. Dr. Joe, tell us about the Sleep Survey 2014.
So the National Sleep Foundation, Sleep in America poll, it's been the most quoted poll in America for several years. It comes out every March. And when I was honored enough to be here last time, the poll had not been released yet, which is why we couldn't discuss it. It has been released. It was sleep in the modern family this year. Each year it's a topic. I think this year is really a quite topical and timely poll. It was done scientifically. The National Sleep Foundation has actually hired a academic sleep scientist to do the poll now, and she did a great job. She's from the University of Chicago. Scientifically polled over 1,000 people, and the findings were quite consistent with what we see clinically, and really helpful for the dialogue that we're having as a country to how we're doing in families with sleep. So several of the findings, first of all, that when you ask parents, their estimate of their children's sleep is about an hour less than what we normally say children should be obtaining on a nightly basis. So, for instance, under 10 years old, they should get about 10 hours sleep. Most parents estimate their children are getting 8.5 to 9 hours sleep. Certainly, you could have been a subject matter for that, Dr. Jones.
I could have, yes.
So the other thing is the issue of technology. This is quite consistent with the work we've done here in St. Louis with Clayton Sleep. We've done some surveys in high schools and junior highs that found over 70% of parents of children that are either preteens, teens, adolescents, and so forth have at least one technology device in their bedroom. And these parents, scary stuff. And these parents rightly consider this to be a significant impairment to sleep. In our vernacular, and at least in our clinical practice, we consider it to be an epidemic issue. We're seeing more and more adolescent children and college children being brought in by their parents, and almost inevitably, they are sleeping with technology in the bedroom. What do I mean by that? You're sleeping with cell phones under their pillow, not to do what you did, to monitor their sleep, to get their text messages. Every text message which comes in, they wake up, they respond to it, they go back to sleep.
Now, I assume some of these text messages to a junior high girl are extremely important at 3 in the morning.
That is exactly right. They're talking about whatever it is they're discussing. Could wait till 8.
I can't imagine anything that would make me more mad than being woken up by a text message at 3 in the morning.
It is remarkable, and we've seen it firsthand. I mean, my wife and I have been blessed with a large family, so we have them at all ages. You'll walk by and one of the children will be on the couch. Sure enough, they'll be, or one of their friends. You'll walk through the room and they're waking up answering text messages at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 1 in the morning. So when we did a survey to junior high outstate, and so these are young children, anywhere from 12 to 15 years of age. Over 70% of them, in a survey we did with the children themselves, not their parents, were sleeping with a cell phone or some sort of computer device in their bedroom.
It's almost like you just need to go around the house with a bucket and confiscate them at 9 p.m.
Well, that is one of the recommendations then from the poll, from the group of those folks that reviewed the poll data and said, well, how can we use this to improve our sleep health and our overall health? One was for us as parents to both example healthy sleep better, right? To show their kids, our children, that we go to bed at the same time and get up at the same time and try to get enough sleep if we can. 2, that we actually set clear guidelines and rules for, okay, here's why not having technology in your bedroom is important so you can function better during the day. And then set a guideline to say, okay, an hour before bedtime, we're going to set these things aside, and you can pick up your text messages and emails in the morning, and you could even potentially set a time for that. And so to begin that dialogue, it is an important dialogue, but it's sometimes challenging when we get folks in the office and it's become so disruptive to their sleep. There can be some tension between children and parents about the issue, but it's a good start.
Very scary. The poll you can actually find online in this web. You can Google the what was it again?
Well, there's two ways. You go to NSF Sleep Poll in America 2014, or go to sleepfoundation.org, I think.
Yeah, .org. I've actually got sleepfoundation.org up here pulled up on my phone, which I did not sleep with last night, by the way. But anyway, the site's pretty interesting, and it summarizes all of the findings in here. So listeners, you should probably check it out on the web, too, because there's a lot of interesting findings on this website. Is it Sleep Awareness Week? I see that.
It is. Well, Sleep Awareness Week was just a week after we were here last.
Oh, okay.
And so we kind of turned it, and from our point of view here in St. Louis, we've made it Sleep Awareness Month. So we are so glad to be here and appreciate your efforts.
I'm going to mention that to my boss.
There you go.
I think we should recognize Sleep Awareness Month.
Yeah, I agree.
Need a solid nap time, siesta.
Siesta, we could get siesta. See, those Europeans, they had one thing right with siesta, right? We like that.
Yeah.
The other thing that they found, which I think's helpful, and Dr. Jones, I hope you don't mind me referring to you being such a fine young father, is that the children have so many activities right now in our country today, and one of the things that the poll findings brought out was we might be able to help sleep health by looking at the sheer volume of children's activities in the evening that we are feeling obligated to participate. So I think this is a good conversation to start.
Yeah, as I was mentioning as we were walking into the studio today, how our weekend will be with all of these activities. Yeah, I mean, it's way more than what I had when I was that age.
I would, and we've had the same experience, and it's a battle because the children want to socialize and be with their friends, and they want to have a good time. They want to participate, and as a family, you don't necessarily want to discourage that activity, but by the same token, there needs to be a bit of balance. There have been reports over the years. Just a few years ago, there was a town either in Pennsylvania or New York State that actually passed some sort of statutory, whether it was a statute or just an unofficial rule, that all the children's activities were not allowed, no activities were allowed to be on one night per week, whether it was Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday. And then in turn, that was to be the night everybody could go home and have supper together and so forth.
Well, and isn't it interesting? Because even since, and I'm a generation under you guys, but even since I was a kid, you had one, maybe 2 nights a week that you did something, and everything else, the default was you were with family, that sort of thing. And now it's like you have to make a family rule. Friday night is our family night. That's everything else. Assume nobody's going to be here. It's and that's just a terrible precedent.
I don't know how we got to this point in society.
Yeah, there's certainly been an increase in some of the organized single sport play kind of thing. Either you do this sport, that sport, or the other. There has been an explosion of more activities. In some degree, that diversity of activity I think is healthy, but then it's weaving that into the fabric of family life. It is one of the interesting conversations of our generation, really, that's going on, and it's going to impact people like Eric, I think, more than even us. But I'm glad we're having it, and I appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity.
So what you're saying is this many activities may negatively impact the children's sleep or even the parents' sleep, right?
Yes, that's certainly one of the recommendations. When you and your listeners read through some of the polls, they come to one of those things. That's one of the action items is to look at the volume of evening activity as a family and try to either organize it or mitigate it in such a way that it protects your sleep health.
Very interesting. Yeah, this poll is pretty amazing. You guys should check it out online. What's it say about designing a healthy sleep environment for your kids? What do we mean by a healthy sleep environment? Are you talking about the things that are in their room, or
the things that are in the room or the things that aren't in the room? So it's making so that the room has quiet. There's a level of darkness when they go to sleep. In other words, so that they, at least when the sun's setting, depending on the time of the year, or the sun's rising, that doesn't automatically hit their bed or wake them. no technology, and then some sort of temperature control. Cooler's better than warmer. Warm tends to be stimulating. Cool tends to be what we call soporific or sleep promoting. So it's doing that. There has been some work on various things like colors and so forth, but the bigger issues are these issues. And then as parents, that we're supportive of engaging in the process of getting to sleep at night. And each family is going to have some of that, wind down time. Some folks are going to read their children stories or spend some time talking to them, whatever is the activity to wind them down from the action of the day into to healthy sleep patterns. So that's helpful.
I'm guessing you're not in favor of turning the TV on and having them fall asleep to watching TV.
Well, that would be, it's less an issue than, for instance, sleeping with your cell phone. Sometimes as both physicians and parents, we have to pick our battles. If they're doing that in a timely fashion, or they're using the TV with sort of non-stimulating shows to help ease the person or wind them down, that's probably something that could be helpful for many folks. If it's become a crutch or a behavioral crutch to make them go to sleep, that's a little bit more of an issue, because as they get older, you'll have trouble weaning them from that. So watching a show maybe for a little bit to start the wind down process, which is the time when you take away their technology, and then after that, as parents, you spend a little time getting them to bed and so forth. That can be a really helpful discipline. So I could see how you could incorporate that in your family life.
Oh, very interesting.
I think bedtime reading would be another one. I know that's what gets my kids out every time. I pull out like a Milton Friedman book and just start, Capitalism and Freedom,
that's right.
something like that.
You discussed the Laffer curve.
That's right.
That'll do it. All right, folks, stay tuned. When we come back, we got more of Dr. Joe. Call in if you got any questions.
Welcome back to Eye on Health with Dr. Michael Jones.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for hanging on through the break. Hope no one fell asleep. We've got Dr. Joe Ojile from Clayton Sleep Institute talking about the 2014 sleep survey, which has been all over the press. It's on the Today Show. Everyone's talking about it. What a wonderful survey this was this year for families.
I think it is. I think it's one of our better surveys. The National Sleep Foundation is really doing strong work, great work for us as a country and as a health community. And they're the leading public advocacy, patient advocacy forum. So this poll leads the way. As you said, their website's quite good, and I'd encourage readers to go read the polls. They're all good.
Yeah, absolutely. So check out ClaytonSleep.com for Dr. Joe's website, and then also just Google the National Sleep Foundation. That's what I did, and their website pulled right up. We do have a couple of callers, Dr. Joe. You mind talking to a couple of callers?
Be happy to.
All right. Let's see. We've got Rob on the line. I'm going to have to run this board here.
Yeah, you have it over there. I can't do
All
it.
right, so I'm going to press this button.
Look at that.
Rob, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, this is Mike Jones. Thanks for calling in. Do you have a question for Dr. Joe?
Yeah, I was wondering about any research that shows anything about bright white light or the bluish light from LED and fluorescent sources at night that would affect sleep patterns.
Yeah, there actually is emerging research. Thank you for such a good question. There is emerging research looking at various spectrums of light, and you mentioned the blue light. So, for instance, people who work night shifts, they have a thing called blue blockers, so that they can block out the stimulating blue light and potentially go to sleep earlier. There actually was one study, which Dr. Jones, I'm sure, is aware of, inserting blue-blocking cataract lens implants in China. And I don't think they're using those at Illinois eye surgeons, but
well, actually, the typical implant that we use does have a low amount of blue blocking in it. Actually, if you hold the lens up to a light, you'll see it does have a slight yellowish discoloration to it. So there's a small amount of blue blocking lens, and that's on the most commonly implanted cataract lens that I think 70% of surgeons use in this country. The one in China, of course, blocked much more of that wavelength of light, but most cataract patients nowadays are getting some degree of blue blocking,
which is really interesting. So it'd be interesting to see if they did some work to see if the folks who get those sleep better. The goal of using them at a high blocking level is so that people can work the night shift and get to sleep during the day. So this question and what you're implying, it is a work in progress. We are going to see more about it. It is a rather hot topic for productivity issues and with technology. As this sorts of industrial technology is changing, it's affecting our world. And your question's right on the mark. So let's see how in the next few years what comes out.
Marcia, we've got you up on here. We're going to try and get through a few of these calls before the end of the show. What's your question for the doctors?
Yes, my question is, do you have a herbal supplement that will make me go to sleep, a real powerful one? I've tried all the, like melatonin, valerian, and kava and stuff like that, and nothing helps.
Thank you for that. This is a common question, actually, even in the office that people come in for appointments. There's a couple points to your question that are important that we discuss. One is, quote, really strong. Most medications that are going to give you an effect that's going to be I want to use the term in quotation marks, powerful, they're going to be controlled by the FDA and won't be over the counter. The drugs that you mentioned, the natural drugs, can have some gentle effect. They need to be usually combined with well-designed and strictly followed behavioral methodologies. So you might be able to get by using those and using some of our behavioral techniques, which we would do under guidance, but they can be quite effective. The data is quite good, and this was confirmed in the insomnia guidelines brought out by the NIH, National Institutes of Health Consensus Conference a few years ago. Behavioral therapy works best and longest. It has the longest success rates with or without medication. So it may be that you need both of those to get by. Other over-the-counter aids, things like ZQuil and Benadryl and things such as this can be effective in short-term use for an acute event. But if you're having more chronic symptoms, you really should have a conversation with your physician or seek other professional sleep help, which we are happy to help you with.
We've got Wade on line 4. Wade, what's your question?
Hi, doctors. My question is, I'm a cab driver. I drive at night. I've gotten used to the driving at night part. Matter of fact, I'm wide awake at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. But my problem is that my sleep can get screwed up as far as the amount that I get. Sometimes I have to break it up. My wife is sick, and I'm like the prime caregiver. Excuse me, I was right in the middle of eating lunch. I'm the prime caregiver, so my sleep gets screwed up because I have to go to doctor's appointments and stuff like that, and I can't manage to do anything. I try and schedule it either really early in the morning
got about 10
or
seconds,
late in
Wade.
the afternoon.
Yeah. Can you answer it in that time?
Shift work, there is strategy for that, and we're happy to help you. You're breaking up sleep's called polyphasic sleep, and that can be useful for people who work nights.
So check out ClaytonSleep.com, and we'll have Dr. Joe back on where we can take more questions. Thanks, Dr. Joe, so
Thank
much
you
for
for
coming
having
on.
us.
We'll have you back on again soon.
Appreciate
Thank you.
Get more at 971talk.com.